Hi, this is Lars Justinen, and I'm going to do a demonstration showing you how to prepare a scanned photo for a Dodge portrait. You can see this is a typical image that we would get. There's color problems in the hair, around the face, the eyes, as you can see. So one of the first things we want to do is adjust the size of the original scan. Generally, I make it 160 dpi by about 15, 16, 17 inches wide. So we'll enlarge it to this size. And then I usually start by putting this on a layer, so I'll copy it and paste it. I'll remove the bottom layer and delete it. In this case, it's not set up to I've just installed a new version of Painter, so I'm going to add white onto the background here. I usually have white. And the next stage is to work a little bit on the color here. So I use curves, and I usually start out by hitting auto, because sometimes it will bring out a white or gamma or remove a color cast that might be there. So we'll do that. I can see in the hair here, I'll make a feathered selection of say 33, and I'm just going to go into the hair area here and just remove this yellow cast that's here. So I'll go into Hue Saturation, Command U on a Mac, and I'll cut back that, which gets rid of that color, but I want to put a little bit of color back in because otherwise it just won't look real. So we'll go ahead and put a little bit of red and curves back in, a little bit of yellow, and this brings in the warm color that you would normally have. As I look in this, you can see that there's some, it's a little oversaturated with the reds and colors here. So again, I'm going to make a feathered selection of about, say, 6. I'm going to go in here into this eye area. In here, and I'm going to go into Hue Saturation. I'm just going to cut back a little bit on the overall saturation. And in yellow, I'm going to lighten it a little bit, desaturate a little bit, and then last but not least, I'm going to go in and get rid of that red. So go into the red channel and desaturate that, and even darken it a little bit. So we get something like that. Now he's got kind of a yellow cast right in here and here. So I'm going to make a feathered selection of this area, and this area, and this area. And to try to standardize the colorization here, I'm going to go into the yellow channel and shift that over. Now I'm going to exaggerate here so you can see. Now we don't want it that much, we don't want it that direction, but we can shift it towards a little bit of the red and turn that off, and now we've kind of neutralized that color. Now I'm going to go into curves here and just increase the color saturation overall, which will naturally make it or the contrast, but it will make the saturation too much, but we'll take care of that afterwards. So right now we want to make sure that the face features show up in the portrait. So after I do that, I'm going to go back into Hue Saturation, go into the red channel here, cut that back a little bit. As you can see there, that looks good. Go into the yellow, and it's probably okay, but we can still see that there's a little bit of hot yellow right up in this area here, and still a little bit here. So we'll go back into there into hue saturation, go into yellow channel, and I'm going to cut that down in towards the red warmer. And you can see now we pretty much got a hold of that. Now at this point we could take out a few of these little imperfections. There's a number of ways to do it. You can use a cloning tool. I'll go ahead and use the cloning tool in this case. Just get the worst of them here. And I think that takes care of that. So, and then finally I'm going to run a top, well, let me go ahead and save it because sometimes these filters are unstable. So we'll go ahead and save this onto the desktop here as a Photoshop document. And then I'm going to go ahead and run a filter on this. And I like to use something called Clean, which is a program by Topaz. Pretty inexpensive. I'm going to go to Crisp Style. And it's just going to smooth out. You can find similar tools in Photoshop, but I happen to like these ones. So now we'll hit OK. And in a moment you'll see the result of this. Or you should. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to show you the before and after. You can see the graininess. I'll zoom in here. And you can see once this is added in. Now sometimes it'll be take out too much grain. You can hit Shift Command F and go into fade, and you can leave a little bit in. Sometimes I'll go to maybe something like 80%, which leaves a little bit of the original grain in the photo there. So at this point now we can go ahead and cut out this image and prepare it for the portrait. You want to be aware of what the portrait was, so I'm going to quickly double check the job, and I'll go into the queue, and my interface is a little different than yours, but it'll have the same basic information that you have. Let's see, where am I? Here's mine. Okay, so I look at this job and I see it's classic. I see they don't know the eye color, so that's all I need to know, is it'll be for the classic style. So we'll go ahead and close that. This can be important because there are a few styles that don't have a soft edge, and it just might affect the way that you're going to do it. So now we'll create a mask layer. I'm going to go into Photoshop's brush tool, and there's different ways to do this, but this is my favorite way. It's the fastest and easiest. So I will now go in and cut this out, as you see here. By basically painting in the hair. And you can make aesthetic judgments at this point. If you think something's out of place or unusual, you don't have to be absolute. If there's some hair that's doesn't look scuffed or doesn't look like it should belong there, you can go ahead and just remove that. Use your own best judgment. So once I've selected this area, and of course if you accidentally go over something, you can switch it to the opposite value and correct it that way. So now at this point I will go ahead and take my marquee tool, select 0, and now I'm going to go ahead and hold down my option key And rather, you could just take a big tool and paint out the rest of this, but this is what I sometimes do. This is especially good if you have a really complex area. So now I've selected the background here, and I'll hit delete, and now we have just our basic portrait here. Now sometimes you'll see dark shadows around the edges and things, so sometimes I'll take a soft edge again here. I'm 33 pixels, and I'm going to go ahead and just select this, hide, go into curves, and oops, I'm in the wrong channel there. Alright, get out of the mask. I'll go into curves and I'll lighten it up again. I'll exaggerate here so you can see what I'm doing, but I won't want it that much. But just lighten it up. You're trying to get away from kind of that muddy look. Alright. And so at this point, we're just about done. We might want to go ahead and show more of this. One of the nice things in a portrait is to have the soft fade of the material. So there's a couple ways we could do this. I'm going to do it in Painter. You could do it in Photoshop by cloning, but I'll go ahead and show you the final steps I take. So now I'm going to go ahead and save this, close it, and then I'm opening up Painter. Now most of what I'm going to do you can do in Photoshop as well, and I will use a palette knife brush that I like, and it just roughs up the edges and gives this a natural look. You'll notice that I'm not actually putting in individual strands of hair. You can do that at the very end and then use blur in Photoshop to keep it from looking too digital. But here I'm just roughing up the hair a little bit. You can do the same thing to the clothes and so on. Now I'm going to increase the opacity of this blur tool, and that will let me, in the size, and that will let me pull some of this clothing out a little ways. And you'll see that when we go to create a mask, it'll help to to give us some area that we can fade out. It just looks more attractive with a long, dramatic fade out rather than a harsh edge. So there's, again, you could clone this all down in Photoshop, but since I'm in Painter already, I kind of like the smear tool. It's something called a palette knife, and you'll see in a moment how we get it to look when it's all done. Finally, sometimes at this point we can do some last minute things here. I'm going to make this palette knife a little smaller, and I might just go in here and add a little bit of detail, just a hint of sharpness, define this a little bit more. Sharpen a few lines. Don't want to overdo it, but we're creating the illusion that the photograph had more detail than it really did. The skin, that's what they're paying us for, is to make this look good. So I might go in here at this point, and you can reduce your opacity down to like 10%, and we can just go in and add just a little bit of lightness to the eyes here. Just a little bit more clear-eyed. I'm going to take a blur tool here and just blur this a little bit. Same thing, pick a neutral color for his eyes here and make so the iris shows up more. And then here's the pupil around the black, or I guess it's the iris is the black. Okay, just a little bit there. That darkens it and defines it more. So we're about done with this stage. So now we'll go ahead and save this, and then we'll open it up in Photoshop. Again, you could do almost everything I just did. You could do it in Photoshop, but I happen to, again, like those tools. I've used a lot as an illustrator. So now we just, now at this stage you would probably save this. You could, if you're a Q artist, you'll send in this file. It'll look something like that, and we will work with it from this point on. However, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add a little bit more down here. This is just in Photoshop. You don't have to worry about the details here because this is going to be all faded anyway. But okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this at this point and drop it into our background. Now this part you won't do, but this is the part the graphic artists at our company do. Now some of you may do this, but you might as well know how this all works. So we'll take this off of here. Oh, by the way, this is the file you would send as a Photoshop or a PNG file to us, maximum quality. And then we take it and we drop it in. In this case, they've asked it to be in a style that's called classic. So I'm going to resize it into this background here. As you see, I'm going to create a mask for it. I think I'll increase the opacity of the background a little bit. You can see we have kind of a glow back there. And then I'm going to, in this mask, get rid of the edging that you saw here. Now I'll decrease my opacity, increase the size of this, and then I'm going to just gently, and this is what we really like, is this very soft, undefined edge. And then I'll go up into the hair, and to make it look like the light is coming from behind, I'll go in and soften the edge here a little bit, like you see here. It's almost like the light is coming from behind there and lighting up the edge. And finally, I will go into this image, and I'm just going to take a airbrush and make it about 10% here. And I'm just going to go in here and just soften up the features here just a little bit. Just very little. You can overdo this easily, so you want to be careful. And you might, let's see, the highlights here are pretty good. I'll make a judgment call, and I think he could have a little bit darker eyebrows here. So I'm going to select this area here and just darken it a little bit like that. And that's about it. So our last step we do is we turn on a layer of texture. You can see it if I blow up here. And I will remove, it's got two layers. One is just a canvas texture. The other is a brush texture. For the brush texture, we go in and we remove most of that, but we create kind of a soft edge. So some of that texture just kind of eases in and out of the portrait, as you see. So like that. You can see over here, it's appearing, or at least it should. Yeah, I think I had a soft edge chosen still. Okay, so there's how we create a portrait. And the last thing is we'll flatten that and we'll send this to the funeral home as you see it here. Now sometimes, especially with women, I will go in and let me do one more little thing here. Get rid of this little outline here. There's a little bit of a, oh, I'm in the wrong program. Hold on. I mean the wrong layer. Yeah, we'll get rid of a little bit of that outline on the ears. You can, so we don't want that to. We want the ears to show, but we don't. There can be a little bit of outline here and there, but you don't want that overtly. There we go. Okay, so what I was going to say is you can add a few hairs here and there, and I can show you how that looks. I'll get rid of the mask layer because it will cover up anything we try to do. So we'll go in and make it 2 pixels, around 60%. I'll sample that, and especially, like I said, sometimes this is nice for women with, you know, they care about their hair quite a bit. So we'll put a few hairs, but the trick here is you can have a few hairs, but then go into your blur tool and kind of blur that back so it's very subtle, so it doesn't look like it's added on. So that's one more little trick. Last thing is to take a look at the overall color, because now you have it in the background, and in this case it looks a little bit red and hot to me. So I'm going to go into the red channel, cut down the saturation just a little bit, shift it towards the yellow. I'll exaggerate here so you can see. I don't want to go make them look jaundiced, but I'm just moving it a couple notches over, just so it's more neutral. And again, that adding more yellow, put a little bit of yellow here on the nose top. So I'm going to choose the yellow channel, and I'm going to darken that a little bit and lighten that. Maybe cut back to saturation so there's an even color tone to this picture. And the area down below his neck here, I notice, is a little bit light and not saturated as the face, so I can darken that a little bit, increase the saturation just a tiny bit, and there you go. There's your final. And so that's how we'll do it. Now I'll go ahead and save this file, and I'll name it what the master file that came in. I'll replace that. Oops, I can't save it because I still have this one open. So we'll save this and replace the file with that name. And that's it. This is what we will send to the printer. And I'll flatten it, create a JPEG version. Maximum quality, and we're done. One last look here. That's how we make portraits. Thank you.